Friends and families all over the world, hello and welcome to my first presentation about medicine. Here I entitled Principia Medicina. I will tell you why, although I really wish to do this presentation after another one about chemistry. Let's start. In 1687, Isaac Newton, the famous physicist, wrote a book he entitled Principia Mathematica, where he explained gravity in terms of mathematical formulas. And that's where it came my first inspiration of the title of the video, because at that time in the 17th century nature became lawful and mechanics became accurate. Let's do the most common medical symptoms and its significance. When someone has a runny nose, usually it means that he has the common cold. Diarrhea or vomiting are poisoning symptoms. If the skin is pale with fatigue, it could mean anemia. Yellowing in the eyes is jaundice. Any type of bluing is the result of hypoxia or low oxygen in blood. Swelling is edema or the buildup of fluids in tissues. Rash is mostly allergic. Nose bleeding is common in heat strokes. Pain in the chest, especially when breathing, is pneumonia. Gum bleeding is common when someone is suffering addiction of opioids, although it could mean vitamin C deficiency. These symptoms are the mostly common symptoms, although of course there are a lot of others like neck stiffness and photosensitivity are common in meningitis for instance. Types of maladies in the human body, which is a chart of or a categorization of diseases. What cause diseases? Some are microbial diseases like tuberculosis, some are poisons like food poisoning, malnutrition usually for proteins, but it could mean a deficiency like vitamin C deficiency can cause the scurvy malady. Biochemistry diseases like the absence of an enzyme usually because of a hereditary cause like blood porphyria, allergy like hay fever, autoimmune disorders like lupus erythematosus, inheritance diseases like cystic fibrosis, congenital problems like moles, hormonal diseases like hyperthyroidism or what they call it Graves' disease, neurological disorders like epilepsy, and tumors, whether benign or malignant or teratogenic. Needless to mention that cancer is two types. Most cancers are genetically caused by oncogenes, as it may seem, but some types of cancers are caused by viruses or oncoviruses. Historic figures. Andrea Vesalius, first human anatomy dissection. We all know that in the Middle Ages, dissection of the human body was prohibited, and this prohibition led to a lot of medical mistakes. And some people and artists, including Leonardo da Vinci by the way, were body snatchers. They were digging the tomb by curiosity, trying to draw and study the human body. William Harvey, first in describing the blood circulation. Edward Jenner pioneered the concept of vaccination. He saw by accident that milkmaids were actually immune to cowpox. Then he thought of exploiting this phenomena on children. Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy. Homeopathy is the medical method that says like treats like, which means the substance that gives the symptoms of a disease can itself treat the symptoms of the same disease. I know that many people might disagree with me and say that homeopathy is pseudoscience, but these people themselves should rethink mainstream medicine because homeopathy actually has its own heritage. Think about it. Today we are treating cancer with radiation, vaccinating using the exact virus substance and in a very small dosage, exactly like homeopathy principles, preventing poisoning with the same poison or venom, using sex hormones for contraception, managing cold with a cold bath, and treating hallucinations with hallucinogens. Ignis Semmelweis, first in advancing sanitation, he urged doctors to wash their hands before doing any surgical operations. Joseph Lister, first use of antiseptics in surgery. He used carbolic acid sprays, and the gum product Listerine was actually named after him. René Laennec, first in describing auscultation and the inventor of the stethoscope. William T. G. Morton, a dentist who first used ether for anesthesia in dentistry, then in term surgery. Gregor Mendel, the Austrian monk and the founder of Mendelian inheritance or the hereditary laws. Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, they both described the germ theory. This theory was in competition with another false theory called the spontaneous generation. Pasteur described pasteurization. the effect of heat that kills microbes, and Robert Koch he described tuberculosis, and he said that germs cause diseases. Alexander Fleming, the first discovery of penicillin and in turn antibiotics by accident, and the list may continue with Alexis Carrel, who pioneered the transplantation of organs, and Theodore Svedberg, the inventor of the centrifuge, and James Watson, Francis Crick, who described the double helix structure of the DNA. The mechanistic conception of life, a very interesting theory that some might understand and some might not, especially in our age of computers. This theory is trying to explain all physiology in a mechanistic point of view. Some of its hypotheses are correct, some are not, and some are just inaccurate, like tropism in the plant kingdom, geotropism, and phototropism, the capillary action that plays a crucial role in the absorption of nutrients in the plant stem. Plant stimuli. Some plants are stimuli responsive without any nervous system, like Venus flytraps or Mimosa peduca, for instance. Phagocytosis in macrophages, or amoeba dysenteria, for example. Motility in microorganisms. In general, it's a mystery that needs to be solved. Osmosis in kidney nephrons, for example. The kidney is actually a machine that filters the blood without any electricity. Only because the inside of the nephron is salty, the physics can do the rest. Gas diffusion in lungs. To inhale or exhale, you don't need more than the difference in pressure between the inside and the outside, and the rest is technique. Valves in blood vessels that allow the blood to be circulated in one way and closing the other way. Structural memory of molecules. Not only molecules actually, but it can be witnessed in nature in pine cones, for example. They close after exposure to rainwater and opens back after drying. Molecularly speaking, any protein does have a 3D structural memory, including the DNA structure in chromosomes and the geometrical structure of water molecules. Ethology, which is a huge science that requires hours and hours to be explained in details. It's the science that deals with animal behaviors, like how a beehive or ants colony develops their natural behaviors. A brief chart of biochemistry, which is a list of the reactions that are happening in our bodies in our everyday life. Of course, this chart is not everything. The chemistry of the human body cannot be reduced to a chart like this, but still could be useful, like photosynthesis in plants and the Calvin cycle that take place in the plant's protoplast, or the cellular respiration which takes place in mitochondria and the Krebs cycle, the urea cycle, vitamin synthesis like vitamin C from glucose, or maybe vitamin B9 from the methionine folate cycle, or vitamin D from dehydrocholesterol with the help of the sunlight exposure, biosynthesis of different neurotransmitters like the biosynthesis of different catecholamines like dopamine, or the biosynthesis of serotonin from tryptophan amino acid, pyrimidine biosynthesis from glutamine amino acid, purine biosynthesis from ribose sugar, the coagulation cascade, cholesterol, and steroidal hormones biosynthesis, and of course the DNA replication, gene expression steps, which are the DNA transcription and mRNA translation, the apoptotic pathway, and of course the cell cycle and growth and differentiation. The chemical synthesis of molecular drugs, like aspirin for example, from salicylic acid extracted from the willow tree. Extraction and isolation techniques like ultracentrifugation, chromatography, ultrafiltration, etc. Clinical laboratory test of bodily fluids like the urine test or the blood test, etc. Decentralization of animations. Imagine someone who has an idea like a biology information or maybe a song or a short story, and he wants to make it animation. Then he should go to a PR company, or his idea will be stolen before he even tries to think of posting it on social media. Unless we are in a romantic society and they somehow agreed for the help, then two options are available. Either he sells his idea and sold out, and they should pay him the price as if he was part of the production line, like an author or creator, or he is the one who should pay to the company as if it was an advertisement for him, but this way all the production and its revenues will be owned by him. Here is a part of an animation from the internet about muscle contraction in the microscopic scale. The receptor theory is a theory that doctors, or at least all students of medicine, should have known and understood. But before, you should know first that macromolecules are the large molecules that has a molecular weight in kilodaltons, like proteins, nucleic acids, polysaccharides, and polymers are also possible. Proteins in the human body are seven types: structural proteins, transporters, channels, which are transmembrane proteins, enzymes, and some types of hormones, antibodies and immune system proteins, and finally receptors. Receptors in the body are seven types: ion channel receptors like acetylcholine receptors in synapses, G-protein couple receptors like beta receptors in the heart or the bronchus, enzyme-linked receptors like cytokine receptors, nuclear receptors like the receptors of steroids like corticosteroids for instance. So almost all medicines and drugs play in a way or another on receptors, and that was the theory. Psychiatry is under attack because there was an urge to do what was called the evidence-based medicine, or EBM, which should be based on lab testing or at least imaging techniques. But when the disease is chronic and hereditary, with no prognosis and no need for lab testing, swallow the pill in blind faith because the benefits are unknown and the side effects are unknown. Actually, the so-called schizophrenia can intervene with almost anything, for it is the spine of not only psychiatry but all neurological disorders including autism and epilepsy, and in our age of the internet, the whole world today is schizophrenic. There was a theory conspiracy on the internet about mental illness, a theory that has been written by someone who was trying to materialize psychiatric disorders in the world into a disease of biology, and his theory actually became so popular, by the way. It's been said that schizophrenic people are people with high levels of dopamine in their brains. Dopamine level is the dopamine production, not dopamine metabolism, by the way. And the antipsychotic pill, which is usually a dopamine blocker pill, is the treatment they usually prescribe. Then the theory says that the parasite Toxoplasmosis gondii is causing schizophrenia in humans because he saw a lot of it in the brain after dissection. Then he continued saying that this is actually what's happening in its host, the rat, when infected with the same parasite. Usually rats are not attracted to cat's urine, but when the rat is infected with toxo, he said, something is happening that makes the rat attracted to cat's urine, and in turn the cat will devour the rat and the cycle will continue with the life with a likelihood to be transferred to us humans if you have a cat. The psychiatrist doesn't care about you, he cares about the pill he's prescribing. That's the big problem in psychiatry. He can diagnose you with schizophrenia and with a lot of pleasure and happiness, but never open his mouth about homosexuality. He could consider you suffering depression and prescribe you a pill, but he doesn't care at all about the marijuana legalization or the addiction pandemic. To him, you are bipolar and suffering anxiety or PTSD, but he's careless if you suffered a stroke attack. To him, your child could be suffering ADHD and your child needs a pill, mentioning not a thing about narcissists everywhere on social media. Your child is autistic without any proof, while he's a big failure when treating someone with Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease or epilepsy. You are anorexic and you need a pill while the whole world are suffering obesity. He could care about your phobias in order to prescribe you something, but he's absent in time of concussion or blindness or paralysis. Euthanasia is something that he cares about a lot, for it is progress in medicine, but he never thought that he will be not the oncologist, the one responsible for doing this horrible procedure.